Hi, I'm Jack Schaub, and this is Chiller Service Advice, a videocast designed for the curious observer to the seasoned HVAC specialist. This is episode 13 titled Brewery Chiller Basics, where I'll go over brewery chiller maintenance and normal operating guidelines for your chiller, along with tips on expanding your existing brewery or starting up a new one. So whether or not you have a single barrel brewing in your garage or a large-scale production facility with multiple fermenters, bright tanks, and a brew house, you're going to need some kind of a chiller. And that chiller is going to cool the beer throughout fermentation. And when that's done, crash cool that beer down for processing and out the door. Now, whether you have a large chiller or small, you're going to have a reservoir tank and at least one pump. And that pump's going to circulate that fluid throughout the system. And the normal rule of thumb for brewery chiller thermostat settings is between 26 and 28 degrees Fahrenheit with about a 2-degree differential. And that brewery thermostat is actually sensing the return fluid coming back from your brewery. And the reason for that is to keep it more consistent temperature overall and to reduce the fact of the compressor possibly short cycling. Now that circulating fluid must be a food-grade propylene glycol mixture with water. Rule of thumb for this is approximately 40% food-grade propylene glycol, 60% water. Reason for the propylene glycol is that if you ever had cross-contamination and, through your fermenter or a spill or what have you, you don't have a hazmat issue or contamination of your system. Generally, brewery chillers are air-cooled packaged chillers that are designed to be outdoors, weatherproof, to handle all kinds of climates. Now, there are some that are small, very small, portable ones that you can keep inside your brew house because they really don't put off a whole lot of heat. Now, when it comes to brewery chiller maintenance, there's a handful of things that you can be able to do on site to be able to help you keep the chiller clean, well-maintained, and effective. So first is, as I mentioned before about the fluid, is there should be a Y strainer in your chiller. If not, you should have one, or there's some kind of filtration. A Y strainer filters the fluid when it's coming back from your brewery before it gets into the chiller. Shut off the service valves, pull that out, and it's important to do that on a regular basis, and especially after you end up expanding. You want to catch the installation debris. The next thing to do is to clean the condenser coils on the air-cooled chiller. They're constantly getting dirty, especially if they're outside, and you want to do that on a regular basis, but even more so when it's pollen season, almost weekly. Then the last thing you can do is take a sample of the fluid, have a refractometer, which is something that measures the percentage of glycols. Just make sure that it can be able to measure the propylene glycol, which is what you have in your system, and you want to keep that at about 40%, as I mentioned before. And there's a couple reasons for keeping that way, is that when you look at propylene glycol, and in most cases food grade, it's clear. So you really can't tell how thick it is. And if you had a leak or someone filled it with water, it could thin itself out. And on a more serious note, if you have a chiller, let's say it's in Michigan, and it thins out, your chiller could be at jeopardy for freezing outside. Now, if you want to design a chiller system, a cooling system for a brewery from scratch, or if you have, an existing system that you want to expand on, there's a handful of things that you really want to take into consideration before you begin. The heart of any chiller system for a brewery is the reservoir tank and the pump or pumps that are going to circulate that through there. So for instance, if you're starting from scratch, most important thing to do is to make sure you have a large enough reservoir tank so that it can handle what you have now and some expansion. You also want to ask, and have it at a line item when you're having it quoted out, is to have 2 extra ports on the tank with shutoff valves so that you can add a pump or pumps to the system if you're expanding. And the reason for this, doing it now, spend a little money to have it done beforehand, is that if you want to expand and you don't have enough pump or you don't have enough chiller, there are your 2 ports. You can be able to just hook up a pump, run another chiller, and you can expand right then and there without shutting down. The other important thing on a new system is your piping sizes to and from the main trunks, the supply and return. Make sure that they are large enough to handle your expansion. Schedule 80 PVC, which is the gray, which is what I recommend, is very inexpensive to be able to upsize in the beginning where you can't do it after the fact. And make sure at the end of those trunks you have shut-off valves. Again, expansion without shutting down. Shutting down your brewery chiller in your facility just to be able to glue things together is time-consuming and loss of money. Now, when it comes to expanding something that you already have, the important thing is make sure, again, the pipe sizes are as big as you got. But if you only have things that are maybe 1 inch and you really need to upsize that, you may have to add another supply and return header in the existing system. And make sure you have plenty of drop legs, shut-off valves, and as much as you can that's simple to do now instead of reducing downtime later. Well, I hope this has helped you learn a little bit more about brewery chillers, maintenance tips, suggested operating conditions, and even starting something from scratch. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us at chillers.com, where we can help you with brewery service, sales of brewery equipment, or any comments you might have. Thanks again. See you next time.